Now, when I'm performing these calculations, especially if my calculations are getting long and complicated, I might want to store an intermediate result. And Python enables this by, just as every other programming language allows, assigning values and the result of an expression to a name, to a variable. So the way that we do this is we write something like this. So I write save the result of 2 plus 3 in the name my variable. So this will evaluate the expression on the right, 2 plus 3. It'll evaluate it to 5, and it'll store that result in a variable called my variable. And then later, if I want to recall that value, I can ask for the value of my variable back, and I'll get it. So this piece of code here, this whole piece of code, is not itself an expression, technically speaking. Remember, we said an expression is a piece of code that has a value. This is an expression, 2 plus 3. But this whole thing here is not an expression. It's what we call a statement. It doesn't have a value. Okay? We'll see the effects of that in a second when we try to run it in a cell. So whenever we write a piece of code like this, we say that the value of this expression, which is 5, is bound to this name, or the other way around. We say this name is bound to the value 5. Just some terminology. Okay, so let's try this out. So I'm going to basically write the same code I had on the previous slide, changing the name here. I can name it whatever I want. Names just have to start with a letter. They can have numbers in them. They can have underscores, and they're what we call case sensitive. So if I use uppercase, it's different than if I use lowercase. So in any case, I want to name the result of 2 plus 3, something like more than 1. I'll run this cell. You run it and you don't see anything. Why don't you see anything? Maybe we expected to see 5. So remember that Jupyter Notebook cells show the value of the last expression. Well, there's no expression in here. The result, the last cell here is a statement. If I want to see the value of this, I can write in a new cell just that variable name. That turns out is an expression, and I see the result 5. Okay, and then later, if I want to take the value that's in the variable more than 1, multiply it by 2. When I run this cell, I expect to see 10 because it's going to take 5. It's going to fill in 5 for that variable, multiply it by 2, and I get 10. So I mentioned that whenever I run a cell like this, I don't see the result. Here's a little trick, or a little, it's not so much a trick as it is an idiom. A lot of times whenever you write code that assigns a value to a variable and you want to see it, you want to have it printed out, you can just repeat the variable name as the last line of that cell, and then you will see the result. So you'll see stuff like this quite a bit in these lectures and in the notebooks you're working on. So when you're writing a lot of Python, if you're like me, you get lazy, you don't want to type out long variable names or long names at all. Luckily, most editors, and Jupyter Notebook is similar, allow you to autocomplete. So autocomplete works like this. I'm going to start typing the variable name that I want to work with, so more than 1. I hit the tab key, and now a window pops up with possible completions. Now, more than 1 is my first is the first option. That's the one I want. So I hit the enter or the return key, and then it completes it. So this is much nicer than having to type out the whole variable name. It takes so long, and then I'm just so I always have typos. And if I just type the first 3 letters and then hit shift or hit tab and then return, I'm going to get the variable I want more often than not. Okay. So you might have some questions about how variable assignment works in Python. And it's good to get in the habit of, whenever you have a question about how Python works, run an experiment, try for yourself. You'll have access to Python in the browser. You can write whatever code you want, try some things out, and see what works and what doesn't. So for example, I'm going to write some code here. X equals 2. I'm going to assign the value of 2 to x. And then I assign the value of 3 plus x to y. So what I expect to see here whenever I run this cell is y is 5. And it is. Okay. Now here's the question. Suppose I ran this, and later on I change the value of x from 2 to 3. Okay, so I run this cell and do that. So now x is 3. Now I'm going to print out y, and I want to see what the value is. What do you think the value will be? Well, there's two options. Y could either be 5, it could stay 5, or since y, remember, was 3 plus x, and now x has been updated, maybe y would be updated too. So what would it be updated to? Well, we'd have 3 plus x's new value, which is 3, so maybe y would be 6. So these are the two options. Y is 5, y is 6. The difference between these two options is, does y update when x is updated? So let's take a look. Nah, it's 5. Okay, so what this tells us is that at least in the case of math with numbers, y is not updated whenever we change the value of another variable that y originally that was originally used to calculate y. So running experiments like this will help you kind of understand how Python works, and it's good to get in the habit of doing these experiments for yourself.